Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session, which will be on the Disabled Students Allowances, processes and administration. So I'm going to share my presentation now. I will obviously give you an opportunity to ask questions by email to me, and I will share my email address and telephone number at the end of the session. So today's session is on Disabled Student Allowances, the process and the administration for that. And what we are going to cover is types of support packages that are available for disabled students in higher education, what the Disabled Student Allowances are and how they differ from university-based disability provision, the eligibility criteria for the DSAs, the types of support available through the Disabled Student Allowances, and of course the application process, what the study needs assessment involves, and the post-administration and support processes. So if we start first with what types of packages are available to students in higher education, there are two main types of support types. This is the support available through the university itself and support available through the government, which is the Disabled Student Allowances. So let's go a little bit into detail what the university can do for students. So each university will have a disability support service. And in that service, there will be a disability advisors who provide confidential one-to-one appointments to discuss the support students might need for their studies, and will ensure that the relevant information is communicated to staff who need to know. And of course, all of this communication will be with the student's permission. For instance, if a student needs special considerations for their exams, the disability advisors will recommend these to the examinations team. Other examples include the provision of economic equipment for lectures and seminars or extended library allowance. So disability advisors will talk to students to decide what kind of reasonable adjustments are available to them for their specific course, for their specific condition. And we'll put a plan together with the student, and this plan will be shared with the relevant teams within the university on the need-to-know basis, and of course with the student's permission. Okay, so what type of support do they actually provide? The disability advisors will help with the SPOD diagnostic assessment, or otherwise known as dyslexia or dyspraxia assessment. They would help the student with the screening process and advise the student how to access the full diagnostic assessment. They will then support the students with the application for Disabled Student Allowances, and later, once everything is approved by the DSA, how to access the support. So they'll take the student through the process when the student needs support with it. Okay, and now we are going to go into the Disabled Student Allowances, what they are, etc. So the Disabled Student Allowances are a grant to help the students in accessing learning in higher education. And the eligibility criteria for the DSA is that the student needs to have a disability or long-term condition, medical condition, or specific learning difficulty, or mental health difficulty. All of these are classed as disability in terms of the support provision, funding, and of course under the Equality Act. The second criteria is that the student is a home UK student. So unfortunately for European students and for students who are from other countries, international students, classed as international students, this support is not available, but these students can still access support through the university that we've covered on the previous slide. And of course, the student needs to be on a higher education course. Now, the support through the DSA is capped at £25,000 per year. So this is what is available per student. And of course, every student will be looked at as an individual student with individual needs and will be assessed. So they may not need all the funding that is available of £25,000 a year. And some students in very, very few cases will require support that exceeds that allowance. And in that case, the student will have to talk to the university, because the university will be able to advise them how else support can be accessed. But the DSA can fund up to £25,000 a year for any student part-time, full-time, or students on undergraduate and postgraduate courses. So let's have a look now at what conditions would make a student eligible for the DSA. So the first criteria would be, of course, that they have a disability, and some of the disabilities will be specific learning differences, such as dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and ADHD. Also, all the mental health conditions, anxiety, depression, OCD, eating disorders, post-traumatic stress disorders, and of course, many, many more that obviously we are not able to cover here. And as long as the student has a condition that has been or is likely to be there for 12 months or longer, they would be approved for the DSA. So any mental health condition. Okay, and of course, there are many other conditions which are classed as invisible disabilities or long-term medical conditions also, such as lupus, epilepsy, sickle cell, fibromyalgia, hepatitis. I mean, these are just examples that we've come across. And of course, there are many, many more that would make a student eligible for the DSA. Okay, of course, cancer, HIV, chronic fatigue, and Alice in Wonderland syndrome is also eligible. Of course, any student with a physical disability that affects their mobility, any visual disabilities, from blindness to glaucoma and other conditions that affect the student's vision would make a student eligible for DSA. And of course, any condition that would affect their hearing. So even if the student is profoundly deaf or has another hearing impairment, this would make them eligible for the DSA. Okay, and we did mention physical conditions, but this is just an example. Again, we have arthritis or back pain, hypermobility conditions, muscular dystrophy, RSA, tennis elbow, sciatica, and of course, many, many more. In fact, recently, Student Finance England confirmed there are over 1,000 different medical conditions and disabilities that students have been approved for. So of course, we are not able to cover all of these here, but they fall into these categories: visual, hearing, mobility, SPOD, mental health, or long-term medical conditions. Okay, so let's go back to the DSA and see what actually does. So the grant would be considered for any condition that has substantial, long-term, and adverse effect on the student's ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. And as long as the student is a home UK student, as defined by Student Finance England, Student Loans Company, and of course that they're on a higher education course. So if the student is covered by the Equality Act, they would be eligible for the Disabled Student Allowances. Now, let's have a look at some examples of what a student with a number of conditions might expect. These examples are from our video. We have a 3-minute video for students that I'll give you the link to at the end of this presentation. So students obviously will have, are likely to have more than one condition. And here we have an example of a student who has a dyslexia and back pain. So this student, for example, would receive one-to-one study skills support with a dyslexia specialist who would meet the student weekly to talk about various strategies that the student might have to learn how to manage their condition. The student will receive a lot of assistive software that, for example, software that turns speech into text. So the student doesn't have to worry about, oh, how do I start my assignment? But they can just speak to the computer and the computer will type it for them. The students with dyslexia often say, well, I know how to answer questions. I just have a mental block when it comes to writing. So this software, it's called Dragon, will help the student to answer questions or start their essay by just speaking to the computer, and the computer will type it up for them. Then the student would be eligible for a mind mapping software to plan the course assignments. They would be eligible for a reading pen, obviously, if the course requires it. And a reading pen is a piece of equipment that scans text and then reads the text to the student through earphones, and can be very useful for students who are on placements. For example, nurses on the ward, they don't have access to other software or computer and they have to deal with patients' notes. They can use the pen to scan the notes, and the pen would read these notes to them. Of course, if the student is recommended a lot of assistive software, they would be recommended a standard laptop through the DSA. DSA will cover just a fraction of the cost of the laptop, and the student will have to contribute £200 towards the cost of the laptop, because it is deemed that any student in higher education will have to buy a laptop for their course study. So students who do get recommended a DSA laptop will have to make that payment of £200 towards the cost of the laptop. If the student needs printer or scanner, this would be recommended for them. And of course, training on how to use all this assistive technology. So apart from the £200 that the student has to pay towards the cost of a computer, everything else will be covered through the DSA. Now let's have a look at another student's example. This student has anxiety. And for students with anxiety or another mental health difficulty, what we can recommend is one-to-one support to help with the condition. And this support is with a specialist mentor who is a specialist in mental health. And this person would be meeting with the student on a weekly basis, or as often as the student requires it, to talk about organizational strategies, maybe strategies to deal with exam anxiety, or maybe just to plan the student's routine, a daily routine, because they may struggle with that. So depending on what the student's needs are, the specialist mentor will be helping them on a one-to-one basis out of class, of course. If the student has severe anxiety of using public transport, for example, we can recommend traveling through the traveling allowance, traveling by taxi. So the student will be picked up from their home address and dropped off at the university address. And this will be covered through the DSA, but the student will have to make a contribution to the extent of the public cost expense. So, for example, if the student usually takes a bus, they would have to pay the equivalent of a bus ticket to use the taxi service. Of course, a lot of assistive software, depending on what the student needs, and also training how to use the software. There is a fantastic software, different software packages we use for mind mapping and organization, and these can work really well when students struggle with their organizational skills and maybe planning their daily routine and tasks and things like that. So let's look at the last example of a student who has sickle cell and arthritis, so these two conditions. So for a student with physical impairments such as arthritis, we can recommend an adjustable desk and chair, ergonomic chair, for their home. So a specialist will visit them in their home environment to assess what the student needs and then the recommendations will be put in place. So any ergonomic items such as keyboard, mouse, maybe special chair, maybe an adjustable desk, this would be recommended for the student and covered through the DSA. Now, of course, a lot of assistive software as well, a note-taking software and a digital recorder. This note-taking software can be recommended for any condition as long as the justification for the student's need is made clear. So the note-taking software actually records what the lecturer talks about, what the lecturer says, and then the student can listen back to these recordings and be able to manipulate the recording and actually turn the recording into text. Now, speech-to-text software, where the student probably, again, is struggling because of arthritis in their hands. They can't type up their assignment, but they know the answer, so they'll speak to the computer and the computer will type it for them. Of course, if the student doesn't have a laptop, because for these types of assistive software packages, a special laptop is, quite a good laptop is required. So we can recommend the laptop, but again, the student will have to contribute the first £200 towards the cost of it. And of course, students with sickle cell and arthritis would struggle on public transport. So we can actually recommend taxi support for them. And again, they'll have to pay the public transport cost towards the cost of a taxi. The rest would be covered by the DSA. Okay, so let's have a look at some other exam support packages. For example, a student with visual impairment would be recommended specialist support professional with a visual impairment professional. This is one-to-one support out of class where a specialist will talk to students about learning techniques, and maybe support them through the assignment writing and use of the software as well. They can have access to a specialist note taker for their lectures, because obviously the student will struggle with note taking. There will be an assigned note taker that would sit in the lecture and do the notes for them. The student would be eligible for the taxi as well. And a lot of equipment. In fact, students with visual impairment benefit a lot from a high range of different assistive software. For example, if they have impaired vision, we can recommend a very widescreen monitor, 22-inch or even higher. We've recommended even up to 27-inch wide monitors, so the student can have their documents enlarged and they can see better. Of course, a lot of items like high visibility keyboard, or maybe stickers for their own keyboard, or maybe enlarged keyboard with enlarged letters. We have a Read It Scholar, which is to take digital images of books, for example, and project this into the student's computer, so the student can enlarge the text and read it. Of course, there will be magnifier. You can see the image in the middle at the bottom. This is again a digital equipment, a piece of equipment that can enlarge text digitally, so the student will have a book and then use that. It's both portable, it's quite easy to use. And Ocam MyReader, these are the glasses that you see on the screen. So you can see the camera, there's a camera on the side of the glasses, and basically when student goes to the library and searching for a book, the camera captures text and can read this text into the student's headphones. These come with headphones, so the student knows exactly what they're looking at. For example, also around campus, the student might be reading posters or notices. These are quite good, actually. And of course, a lot of software packages, for example, Dolphin Supernova Text Magnifier enlarges everything that's on the screen, and JAWS is the reader for blind students. Okay, again, these are just examples. For students with with hearing impairment, what we can recommend is, again, a specialist support professional for out-of-class support, because students who, for example, use British Sign Language, this is their first language, British Sign Language. They don't actually speak English grammatically the way we do, so they would need support in improving or maybe adjusting their grammar when they write assignments, for instance. So this professional would help them to do that with their syntax and their vocabulary as well. So this is a professional who would work with them out of class. Of course, British Sign Language interpreter for lectures and seminars where this is required. And of course, the specialist note taker for class. Okay, there's also for students who would benefit from this gadget. It's called the Roger digital system. You can see a pen hanging around the neck of the lecturer. So this pen would transmit what the lecturer is saying straight into the student's hearing aids. So the student doesn't have to sit in front of the class and struggle to hear the lecturer or try to lip read. Everything that the lecturer says will go straight into the student's hearing aids. And of course, all the background noise will be eliminated. So this is quite good piece of equipment that we recommend quite often. Okay, so just to sum up, DSA can help with one-to-one support in class, including the study skills and mentoring and professional support out of class. For one-to-one in class, this is mainly the note taker. Travel to university when the student is feeling unwell, with the taxi, of course. IT equipment and assistive software, ergonomic equipment for the home, and specialist equipment for visually impaired and hearing impaired students. Okay, now the DSA process can be very convoluted, lengthy, and confusing. That's why I would take you through it quite in detail. And I would tell you as a professional where the points are where you need to be checking with students, because it takes quite a long time to actually to get through it, but it's absolutely worth it. As you've seen, the types of support the student can get, absolutely invaluable. So there are 8 steps in the process. The first one is to obtain the medical evidence, then apply for DSA, receive the DSA letter, book study needs assessments, attend the assessment, receive the support, receive the DSA2 letter, and then contact the suppliers of support that have been approved by DSA. So don't worry, I'll take you through everything in a little bit more detail. So I just wanted to show you how many steps there are in the process, and for a student who struggles with organization, this is an extra burden. So we need to be aware as professionals where we can step in and help the student. Okay, so the first point in that process, the first step in that process is to collect the medical evidence. And the medical evidence can be a diagnostic report for specific learning difficulties. Okay, the report is usually quite a few pages long and is organized before the DSA process starts. So remember, the disability advisors can help with this at university, or the student may have had a diagnostic assessment done before they even join university at school. So a diagnostic can be medical evidence. A medical letter for medical conditions can be a medical evidence. It has to be written by a professional. So the student's GP or a consultant or a therapist, for example, can write a letter. And if the student doesn't have any of those, but they know they have a condition, we can give them the DSA disability evidence form, which is very clear and very easy to complete by medical professionals. So if a student comes to us and says, well, I have depression and my doctor knows about it, what do I do? We'll just advise them to get this form. We'll email the form to them and get them to fill it in and take it to their GP to complete the next 2 pages. So the first page is for the student to enter their names and their customer reference number for student for the DSA, for Student Finance England. The second page is just for the medical professional to enter their credentials and their address. And the last page, the third page, is to give a little bit more detail about the student's disability and when it was diagnosed. So this form asks for the specific information so that the eligibility can be determined easily. Because sometimes when doctors write medical letters, they don't include all the information that the DSA needs. So that's why this form is actually quite helpful. Okay, so the student obtains the medical evidence, and the next stage is to apply for the DSA. So they can apply online, or they can apply by paper. Okay, if they apply online, this is the website. They can do it at the time of their application for the course loan. So they're prompted, if they have a condition, they're prompted to apply for DSA, and then they're prompted to upload the medical evidence, or the medical evidence can be emailed. Now, for students who are on full-time undergraduate courses, they apply once. So they can apply once, and then the DSA rolls over every year. Okay, but for students on part-time courses, or students who are on postgraduate programs, they have to fill in the form every year. They have to fill in the DSA form every year, but they don't have to supply the medical evidence. They only supply the medical evidence the first time they apply. Okay, so just to make it clear. Can be done online, can be done by paper. Okay, if it's done by paper or online, it is very important that the student gives their permission for DSA to share information with the university, with the disability advice department, and also with the needs assessment center, because if they don't give this permission, we are not able to help them. And then the student will be in a muddle. They'll get confused, because the process is quite lengthy and confusing itself, but we wouldn't be able to help them much. DSA would not give us any information on the students' application and where in the process they are. So we would always advise, if you are helping students apply for DSA, ask them to give permission so the information can be shared with the needs assessor and the university's disability team. Okay, so the student has applied for DSA, they've submitted their medical evidence. The next step is to receive a what we call DSA 1 letter, which is the eligibility letter. The letter usually arrives about 2 weeks. It should arrive within 2 weeks of the application and medical evidence submission. Sometimes it can get it can be a little bit later, depending on how much backlogs student finance have, but usually they're quite good within 2 weeks. The student should get an email. And it's important to remember that only the student gets the email, nobody else. So the student needs to be prompted to check whether they've received this approval letter, because without this approval letter, they can go through to the next stage. The letter confirms the accepted condition. So if the student has applied, for example, for dyslexia, the letter will specify that they've applied for this dyslexia. This would be in the first paragraph of the letter. It says, we have reviewed your application and can confirm you're eligible for disabled student allowances for, and then the conditions, accepted conditions are listed, 1 or more conditions. If the student hasn't been approved for one condition or more, let's say they haven't submitted medical evidence that student finance accept, this would be also included in the letter, and they would be advised what to do next. So a student may receive a letter which confirms one condition and not confirm two others. The letter will clarify what to do next. And if they've been approved, the student will be invited to book the appointment for study needs assessment. This is under step 1 in that letter. And this letter, because it's digital, it contains a link where the student can click. And this is what they would get. They would get this website where they can enter their postcode. Now, what students do, they usually enter their home postcode, and then the website would churn a lot of needs assessment centers that are close to the student. The student doesn't have to go to the needs assessment center that comes up. The student can go to any approved needs assessment center. So it's their choice where they go. If they enter Middlesex postcode, the Middlesex University's postcode will be the first ones to come up, the Needs Assessment Center at Middlesex University. If they enter their home postcode, another center will come up, but it's important to emphasize that it is the student's choice where to go. Okay, so the student has found the center, and they book through that center. Some students may choose to come to us, which of course we would more than welcome. And when they contact us to book the needs assessment, we usually can offer them an appointment within 1 or 2 days. Okay, so we have a lot of flexibility, especially if most of the appointments are remote. Although we have here that all the services are remote, we do offer face-to-face as well currently. So the student will be offered an appointment and would be asked to submit the DSA Award Letter that invites them for the needs assessment appointment. Okay, to submit the DSA Award Letter, submit the medical evidence, for example, the diagnostic assessment, the medical letter, or the medical evidence form, and complete a pre-assessment booking form. Why do we ask for all of this? Because we absolutely know nothing about that student. We don't know the student. Even if they're a Middlesex student, we don't have access to their details. So we need to know what the student's name is, what course they're studying, how long the course is, what their condition is, how are they struggling with their condition. We need to know that they have been approved for DSA, because for funding purposes, we need to have sight of that DSA Award Letter. And also we need to know what the medical evidence says. How is that condition impacting the student? And to obtain all of that information before the appointment and make sure that we prepare, the assessor prepares for the appointment, we ask for that information. Okay. And then once we have it, obviously we'll book the student straight away. We'll offer them an appointment. We'll have the study needs assessment. Now, the study needs assessment is not a test, and this is what we tell students, especially those students who have gone through the diagnostic assessment process where they were given a lot of tests to do. So it is a confidential meeting, and it is a rather informal meeting. It's basically a discussion between the assessor and the student about what are they finding difficult in their studies. How is the dyslexia impacting them? Are they struggling to get on public transport? So the assessor has a set of questions that they've prepared based on all the information we've obtained from the student and the documents. So they would ask specific questions to the student, and then they would make recommendations for support strategies. So the assessor may recommend may recommend assistive software, may recommend one-to-one support, and all of this will be discussed with the student. All the software will be demonstrated to the student, all the equipment will be shown to the student and how it works. And then the student needs to agree to these recommendations. The aim of that assessment meeting is to put all the recommendations in place for the student. We are on the student's side. We want them to achieve on that course. That's why we will try to recommend all the support that they need. But if the student doesn't want some of the support that we recommend, we would make a note of that in the report and would only recommend what the student has agreed to. Now, this meeting usually lasts between an hour and 2 hours, depending on the student's condition, depending on how much there needs to be discussed. Because some students come with a list of conditions, and of course there needs to be a lot of in-depth discussion on what would be the best thing for the student. So after the meeting, the assessor will ask the student to agree to all the recommendations, and again, we'll ask them for consent to share all that information with the university. Now, in the meeting, we also tell the student that the support that we can recommend is not in cash. They can't get cash. All the support or all the funding is in the form of support services for them. Okay, now let's move on to the next stage, which is the report. The report is written, and it usually takes about 2 weeks after the assessment, because the assessor has to write up all the recommendations and find support suppliers that are able to deliver this type of support to the student. So the report is very confidential, and of course we ask the student for permission to share it with the university. It is very detailed and lists all the difficulties the student encounters in their studies. We do warn them that we're interested in what they can't do, not what they can do, because the funding will depend on their need for additional support. The support makes the recommendations for the agreed support and lists all the recommended items that were discussed with the student. The report also includes different quotes for assistive software, for taxes, for one-to-one support, depending what's been recommended. So basically, the assessor chooses several suppliers, and then student finance will make a decision which supplier to provide the support to that particular student. And this report can be quite long. You can see the first page of it. It usually is about 20 pages long, and yeah, it can be quite detailed. Actually, it is quite detailed. Although we do say it takes about 2 weeks to write up the report with all the support suppliers, etc., we usually do it quite quicker, usually within a week. And once this report has been written up, a copy goes to the funding body, a copy goes to the student, and if they've given us permission to share with the disability team at university, we'll send a copy to the disability team. And of course, the report will be password protected because it contains a lot of sensitive information. Okay, and usually within 2 weeks of the support submission to the funding body, the student would receive the DSA approval letter or award letter. We call it DSA 2 letter. Now, the DSA 2 letter lists all the support that has been agreed by student finance to fund. So the student finance will look at our reports and decide what to fund. Usually they fund 100% of what we've recommended. If they have any questions about some of the recommendations, they would go back to the needs assessor and ask questions, and then obviously a decision will be made. But by the time the student received the letter, everything should have been approved. So the support would be approved. For example, on this letter, probably you can't see it in detail, but the support supplier has been agreed for the equipment provision. and the student has to contact the support supplier and make the order. The support supplier doesn't know that the student has been that they have been selected for the provision of equipment. That's why it's very important that the student sends the letter to all the support suppliers. Okay, apart from equipment, the letter will contain information about all the one-to-one support and taxes or whatever else has been recommended for the student. For example, printing costs, consumables for printing ink and paper is also included there, because this can be recommended to the student as well. Okay, so the DSA letter is received by the student. The university also gets a copy of the DSA letter if the student has given permission to Student Finance England or to the DSA team to share this information with the university, of course. If they haven't given permission, then the university will not receive a letter of the DSA, will not receive a copy of the DSA2 letter. So once the student receives the DSA2 letter with all the support suppliers and approved support, it's their responsibility to contact the support suppliers. And this is another point where you as professionals will have to probably check with the student, have you received the letter? Okay, so what does the student need to do? They need to email a copy of the DSA2 letter to the support suppliers listed on it. If they have been approved for a computer, for example, pay the £200 directly to the chosen equipment supplier. And if they have been approved for any one-to-one tuition, there will be some registration forms and consent forms to be completed, but the support supplier will send these to them. Okay, right. What we usually tell students is that the responsibility of managing the process lies with them. We as professionals can help them at a different stage, but obviously we don't receive all the communication, and if they need the support, they really should reach out to us. We do send them chaser emails at different stages, but of course the student has to come to us and say, I need support with this process. It's important to know that it can take up to 3 months or sometimes longer to get approval from application to actually approval. So it is good for the student to start as early as possible. If they don't have a condition in year 1, they can apply in year 2 or whenever they have been approved for, whenever they have medical evidence for their condition. Okay, but we usually recommend to start as soon as possible. So just to give you an overview of how long the different stages take. So to obtain the medical evidence, it depends on the GP practice consultant or how long the student has to wait for a diagnostic assessment. So really, I can't give you a timeline for that. To apply for DSA, the actual application, again, it depends on the student. Have they submitted the medical evidence? Have they actually finished the application form, or they've just started it? So again, it's up to the student. Once they've applied, it usually takes 2 weeks for a decision to be made. And then when the student receives the DSA1 letter, apart from the student, nobody else receives a copy of it. Again, the student needs to make the booking or inform somebody that they're struggling to make the booking, so we can get support to them. Now, attend the assessment. Different centers have different waiting times, but with us, we can usually, if we have everything in place from the student, then we can offer them an appointment within 1 or 2 days. To receive the support, again, usually takes 2 weeks, sometimes a lot less, like a week or even shorter. Receive the DSA letter with the approved support, it takes 2 weeks. And then contacting the suppliers, again, it depends when the student contacts the suppliers, it's out of our hands. Okay. Now, if there's a problem with the support package, let's say their computer has broken down, the student needs to contact the DSA supplier that provided the computer to them. If there's a problem with a tutor, let's say the study skills tutor, or maybe a mentor, or maybe with a taxi, they need to contact again the supplier and try to resolve the problem. We've had students whose taxis haven't been arriving on time, so we tell them just contact the taxi company and talk to them first before you make a complaint, because each company will have a complaints process. Now, if a resolution hasn't been found and the student is still unhappy, then we as an assessment center can make a recommendation for a new supplier. So we would have to send quotes to the DSA for 2 new suppliers, but the student needs to inform the DSA that they are not happy with the support that has been provided to them. And this is for one-to-one support and for taxi. For equipment, they can't change the supplier that easily. If the equipment has been supplied to them, they have to work with that supplier. Okay. Now let's have a look at what happens if anything needs changing on the DSA package, DSA support package for the student. So if a student, for example, finds that they need another piece of equipment that hadn't been discussed at the needs assessment, they can contact the needs assessor, the assessment center, and this can be made as a new recommendation. So they'll receive another DSA 2 letter and contact the supplier who would supply that piece of equipment to them. Or some students who are eligible for taxi, for example, they may need new drop-off or pick-up point, for example, if they've changed addresses, or maybe if they're on placement, on a different placement, they need to tell the assessment center or their assessor, because we need to obtain quotes for that new taxi journey and get this approved through the DSA. Again, a new DSA letter will be sent to the student. So all of this can take time. So we advise students to let us know as soon as they know of a change to their DSA package. So if, for example, they are not happy with the study skills or mentoring supplier or assistive technology supplier, we can change that for them, but it can take time. Or, for example, if a student runs out of hours, we usually recommend a set number of hours per year, let's say 15 or 20 or 30 hours of study skills per year or mentoring per year, but the student has a higher need. We can increase that amount. We just need to make an additional recommendation. So the student needs to get in touch with us, with the Needs Assessment Center, for any of these changes. Now, there are cases when a student, for example, has been approved and assessed for one condition. Let's say they've been approved for a mobility difficulty, and we've put in recommendations for them. These are already approved, and the student has received their chair. They're taking the taxi. They're using some of the assistive software. I mean, the assistive software has been recommended to them. But now the student has been diagnosed with dyslexia, and they've sent this medical evidence to Student Finance England. Okay. They can receive additional help. Okay. So what they need to do is, once they've received their diagnosis of a new condition, they need to send it to DSA. They don't have to apply again. They just need to send the new medical evidence, and then a review of needs will be triggered, which review of needs can be done remotely. And we would recommend additional support. So, for example, for this student who originally had arthritis, and we recommended some support, we can recommend now more support. We can recommend one-to-one with a study skills tutor because they have dyslexia. We can recommend the reading pen, or we can recommend whatever other software is required for the student. So just remember, the DSA support package can be topped up if a new condition has been approved. Okay. And as I mentioned, only a new medical evidence needs to be sent to the DSA for a new condition. The study needs assessment will be done as a review, and the student again will go through the process of receiving the letter, the DSA 1 letter, which tells them go for study needs assessment review, but they will be advised to go to their original center. So if they've come to us for their original assessment, they have to come to us again for the review appointment. And they'll get another DSA 2 letter after the assessments. Basically, the process will happen again. It's just quicker this time. Okay. So again, we keep telling students, don't forget, the responsibility is yours, and you should start as soon as possible because it can take up to 3 months or longer from start to finish. And just to give you our contact details, we are based in Middlesex University. We are part of Middlesex University, North London Regional Access Centre. And we are based in Shepherd Library on the lower ground floor of the cafe. Most of our assessments currently happen online, but of course we offer face-to-face appointments if the student asks for that, because now the Department for Education have approved remote assessments if this is the student's preference, and the majority of our students prefer remote assessments via Zoom, which are as good, which are actually quite flexible and very good. If the student has any questions, they can contact us on these numbers. And obviously there's a lot of information on our website, which you can access. And I wanted to thank you for listening to that presentation. I hope I've made it clearer about the DSA. I've taken you through the steps. I hope now you have a better understanding of what this complicated process involves, and better understanding of how to support the student through that process. If you do want to ask any questions, please send me an email to my personal email address. It is i.stanova@mdx.ac.uk. It is on the screen in red. This is my personal email address, or you can email the office and one of my colleagues will pick up the query. If you need to contact me, you can also phone me on this number or on the mobile. And of course, you can see the video link here at the end of on the slide. I'll send you the link separately, and you can see our website address. So for any questions, please do get in touch with us. And I want to thank you again for listening to this presentation. Do get in touch with us. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.